Here we go. Now we can see it. All right. Hello, everybody. And thank you for joining our CDN and CNN RN Credential Update webinar. I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to give you a little bit of information just to remind you what you probably read in the announcements that we've been putting out since last month, the new credentials for 2026. Share screen. Okay. And then after we go over a little bit of information, we're going to try to take some questions. I'm sure everybody came with lots of questions. Is a new concept that we're working with this year. This webinar is being presented by the NNCC, the Nephrology Nursing Certification Commission. They are the commission that governs the credentials of CDN CNN, as well as the technicians and the NP roles under nephrology. And also from the Center for Nursing Education and Testing, CNET. CNET is the test development company that works with NNCC to develop the exams, from writing questions and assembling the exams all the way through the practice analysis or the job task analysis, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. I am Andrew Carley, one of your hosts. I'm Chief Operating Officer with CNET. I've been with CNET for 26 years now. And I don't have a nursing background or anything in the medical field, but I used to be a teacher, and I now hold a credential for credentialing. So I am actually certified as a professional to credential. Believe it or not, there are certifications to certify. But I am here with my colleagues from the NNCC, and they are Caroline, Lori, and Jennifer, who will now introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Caroline Webb. I'm the chair of the CNN Test Committee and president-elect for NNCC's commission, and appreciate you all joining us today.
Hi, I'm Lori Mahaffey. I am the secretary for the NNCC and one of our commissioners. I have been a CNN since 1991 and have been involved in nephrology for 38 years now.
My name is Jennifer Murray. I am a co-chair on the CDN Test Committee, as well as the Board of Commissioners. I hold the CDN credentials since 2017. And I've been working with NNCC since 2018.
Okay, thank you. And they, of course, are going to be answering a lot of the questions dealing with content when it comes to the credentials. But what I want to do first is kind of remind everybody what we said in our announcement. And one of the biggest things is that both the CNN and CDN credentials are accredited by the ABSNC. ABSNC stands for the Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certification. They govern, that's kind of the big board that governs and holds the standards that we look up to and all the standards that we follow to be sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do to make your credentials fair. In being accredited, it shows that your credentials demonstrate a commitment to advancing healthcare, reflects support for personal growth, and of course ensures the highest standards of care. It's very important to keep our accreditation. You go for accreditation every 5 years, you have to reapply. And there are 18 standards that we have to adhere to. In doing that, let's see if I lost my thing here. The requirements for accreditation include, and this is a very large cycle, so I won't go through all of the information here, but what I wanted to show you was that we don't just write exams and launch them and never go back to take a look at what those questions are. We actually, in order to maintain accreditation, have to, every 5 years, launch a practice analysis, which is what you see at the top of the certification cycle. That practice analysis or job task analysis is a survey. Some of you may remember taking that just a couple of years ago, and we're going to talk about some of the data we got back. But that practice analysis shows us what you're doing in your practice. We ask you questions about the tasks you're doing, the activities that you're doing, as well as some of the knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to do those activities. And then we take a look at your demographics and see who you are, your age range, the patient's age ranges that you're working with, as well as where you work. And then we do a comparison and a contrast with those activities. And that's how we come up with what the eligibility criteria is for both credentials and what those blueprints look like for your tests. The test assembly after the blueprint changes, of course, and then we do what we standard setting activity, and that determines the cut score. But again, this is just to remind you we have a lot of standards that we have to adhere to in order to maintain that accreditation with ABSNC. But going back to the practice analysis, that survey that we sent out, and we send out every 5 years, and we do a deep analysis to see what's happening out there in your practice. Again, just like you had in the past, you participated and you told us what you're doing in your practice now. And one of the interesting things that we've seen, and especially in this analysis, was that the current CDN and CNN programs, including the exams, do not reflect current practice, and we have to make a change. The next item here is to show you that it's not that it's not just deciding to make the change, we must make that change in order to maintain accreditation. So any of the decisions that we have are data-driven and evidence-based. We're going back to that practice analysis, what you told us, and that's why we're making these important decisions this year. One of the main things we've seen, and we did put this out in our announcement, is that there is no significant difference that we saw when we did that comparison and contrast between the demographics of you, the nurses, and all the activities you do. There was no significant difference between the CNN and CDN groups based on education or the degree. And it's very important to know that. And we'll have a couple slides coming down the road here to show you what we saw. But just remember, one of the announcements we said was the BSN is no longer required for either certification. The eligibility criteria will be the same for both the CNN and the CDN as far as practice hours, continuing education requirements, and that is how many you need, and the cost. Everything's the same. So this is what I was talking about. Back in 2018, our practice analysis survey showed us CNN with the highest level of education. If you look at the baccalaureate degree back in 2018 with the CNN group, it was 44.6%. And when you look at associate degree, it was 17.1%. Look at that baccalaureate degree back in 2018 compared to now. This is the data from the practice analysis that you just participated in and why we're making these changes. The CNN now, the baccalaureate degree for that nurse went up to 56.7%. And that associate degree dropped down to 9.5. The master's higher than it was before at 22.1% compared to what it was in 2018. Now let's look at the CDN. Same thing. We have the baccalaureate degree with the CDN group back in 2018. It was 27.9%. The associate degree was up at 50.5. So just over half the group for CDN had the associate, and just about a quarter, just over a quarter, had the baccalaureate. But look at what we found now. The 2024 practice analysis, the most recent, showed 43.4. Again, you're creeping up to almost half that group for CDN has the baccalaureate degree. The associate degree dropped down to 31.5. So again, just in those comparisons, baccalaureate from just about a quarter, associate was half, and now 43.4 baccalaureate, so a much larger group holding the baccalaureate, and associate degree nursing 31.5. So what we're showing you again is there's a tremendous change in the nursing education. And in fact, in 2024, in the spring, the graduating candidates who took the NCLEX exam, it was the first time that over 50% of those graduates had a baccalaureate in nursing. So there's a lot of changes going on. And when we did that comparison and contrast back with your practice analysis, demographics, and activities, again, we did not see a significant difference between the CNN and CDN groups. Therefore, we're cutting out the BSN as far as eligibility. So what are the big changes, you wonder? The CDN will now, again, this is from our announcement that we put on display, will now primarily focus on the care of the patient undergoing hemodialysis. For example, acute kidney issues, chronic kidney issues, post-transplant DGF, and unit issues that you might encounter, like emergency disaster planning, water treatment, and patient care planning. The CNN exam and credential will reflect a broader nephrology scope of practice, and that will include peritoneal dialysis, home therapy, and then patients across the life cycle, such as CKD patients before dialysis and pediatrics. Another thing we shared with you is, of course, this is all happening this year. Starting in January, we made that announcement. What you need to know is all here in this timeline, and this is on the NNCC website. In May, on May 31st, that is the last time you can actually submit and have accepted the application for the current CNN and CDN as we know it. Because starting June 1st, those applications will disappear and the brand new applications holding the new eligibility criteria for the new exams will launch. August 31st, right at the end of summer, is the last date that you can actually take the old exam forms as we have them now, because September 1st, the new exams will launch, and that will be the only exam that you can take for the CDN and CNN, reflecting the slides and the eligibility that we've shared with you. The other few things that I have just after January are just to remind you, of course, we have this open webinar. We might have another if we need to, if we don't get to all the questions or if some other questions come up. But we want you to know we're here to answer these questions. In April, on the 24th through 28th, there's the ANNA conference, and NNCC will be hosting a booth, and they'll have representatives like Caroline, Lori, and Jen that will be there to answer any of your questions. And then May 6th through the 10th, the National Kidney Foundation will hold their conference. And again, before May, if you have any questions and you're there for the NKF conference, visit the booth and someone will be there representing NNCC to answer any questions. Okay, that is it as far as giving you a reminder of the information. Now we're going to turn to some of the questions that have already been sent in, as well as what's coming in with the chat.
All right, these questions are questions that you guys sent in to us via the email questions@nncc-exam.org, and some with the registration of this webinar. So hopefully they'll get to some of the hottest topics that have been sent in. We're going to start with Lori. She has our first 3 questions.
Okay, question number 1. I presently hold a CNN. My CDN has expired. I presently work in the hemodialysis center and also manage a home program. Will I need to take the CDN exam even though I hold a CNN? And the answer to that is no, you can keep your CNN credential and continue to recertify as a CNN. Okay. Question number 2, I am currently a CDN. If I test for the CNN and fail that test, would I recert as a CDN? And would I have to pay a recert fee as well as the CNN test fee? And the answer to that is, if you take and fail the CNN exam, you still have your CDN credential as long as you continue to recertify as a CDN. You would pay to take the CNN exam and you would pay to recertify the CDN credential. Okay, and the third question is, I've demonstrated expertise in both new definitions for the CDN and the CNN. I let my CDN expire because the earlier definition suggested that the CNN was a higher designation and included the CDN knowledge. If we were previously CDN certified and maintained our CNN, can you reinstate the CDN and keep the CNN? Is the CNN a higher designation? And the answer is no, the CDN and the CNN are equal certifications. They cover different roles of nephrology nursing. CNN does not include all the CDN knowledge. CDN does not include all of the CNN knowledge. They are separate exams covering separate roles. Your CDN cannot be reinstated. You must take and pass the exam to earn the credential for either the CDN or the CNN. You may hold both credentials, but would need to take and pass both exams.
All right, thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
Our next few questions are, I'm a nurse preparing to take the CNN exam. Will the study materials and preparation for the exam change? And the answer to that is no. All of our study materials are going to remain the same. It just really depends on which exam you're taking, and we will share the blueprints later on and you'll be able to see all of that information, but study materials, review courses, they remain the same. You just want to focus and highlight the areas that you need to be studying based on the exam that you're taking. Our next question, I currently hold the CDN credential. I have worked in dialysis and nephrology for going on 8 years, various capacities. When I got the CDN, I didn't have a BSN. Can I update my credential to CNN with no further requirements? And you would be welcome to update your credential to CNN to more accurately reflect your role in nephrology nursing, but you would have to take and pass the CNN exam. So if you choose to keep your CDN, you continue to recertify as normal, but if you wanted to take the CNN, you would pay for that exam and continue to recertify that if it better suits your role. And then I am a nurse with just an associate's degree. I obtained my CDN and wasn't able to sit for the CNN due to the previous requirements. Do you have to retest in order to change your credential from CDN to CNN? And we just want to emphasize that CNN and CDN are equal credentials, so one's not better than the other. The difference is that they reflect different roles in nephrology nursing. So changing from the CDN to the CNN isn't necessarily an upgrade, it's just a lateral move. So if you work in the chronic dialysis unit, the CDN reflects your role. If you work in other areas of nephrology, the CNN will reflect your role. So if you choose to keep your CDN, you recertify every 3 years as normal. If you choose to change to CNN, you'll need to take and pass the CNN exam. And then Jen has our final questions.
Good evening, everybody. So the question that I have is, my practice reflects the CNN credential. How do I change my credential from CDN to CNN? And the answer to that is you will need to take and pass the CNN exam. The next question that came in is, I have a CDN and will be renewing this year. I'm thinking of changing and testing for the CNN. Would I lose my CDN credential if I failed the CNN exam? And would I be able to hold both credentials? And the answer to that is, as long as you're currently certified as a CDN, you will not lose your CDN credential if you fail the CNN exam. You have the option of keeping your CDN credential, and to do this, you would need to recertify your CDN every 3 years as you are doing now. You are able to hold both credentials. And the final question that we have is, how many CEUs are needed to renew my CDN credential? And the answer to that is you need 45 over the past 3 years to recertify both CDN and CNN credential.
Perfect, thank you, Jen. All right, we have a small but mighty team that are checking our Q&A box. So I'm gonna reach out to them really quickly and just see if there's anything that has come in the meantime. Okay, we have a question about the CE requirements. So we are making the CE requirements equal, so there will be no difference in CDN and CNN. And we will share those with all that eligibility criteria on the timeline, as well as the blueprints moving forward, but they will be equal. Anything else? All right. Well, it is a little early on our wrap-up time, but those are the questions that we received. We really appreciate your time and sharing this evening with us. This is a process we're really excited to join all of you with, and we have that email open, questions@nncc-exam.org. If you think of things after this evening that you want to send, if you have questions, please reach out. Again, we're excited to do this alongside all of you, and we look forward to this year and all these big changes. All right, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.